I now call the East Lyme Zoning Commission special meeting on March 14th, 2024 to order at 7:30 p.m. Could we do the Pledge of Allegiance now, please?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, welcome everybody. Glad to see you here tonight. I'm here. Mr. Peck is not here tonight. Ms. Markovitz? Here. Mr. Foley?
Yes.
Ms. Kalal?
Here.
Mr. Paivo?
Here.
Mr. Liska? Ms. Susko? Is Sarah Susko here tonight? No. Ms. Uhas? Welcome back from vacation. We have Mr. Mulholland, Ms. Loroco, and Ms. Hardy, our ex officio, is here, and I believe we have Attorney Carey with us tonight. Thank you. Of course, we have public delegations, the time when members of the public are invited to speak to the commission on items that are not on the agenda. And because of the length of our meetings, if whoever wants to speak could keep it to 3 minutes, that would be appreciated. Yes, ma'am, come on up.
Hi, Lisa McGowan again, 33 Spinnaker. Yeah, I'm just here to remind everyone who hasn't been to a meeting before, or doesn't read the paper, or doesn't Facebook message me or call me, that Mrs. Ann Thurlow lost her seat by 41 or 50 votes in the general election. And by my count, if you have 2 meetings per month for the next 42 weeks, or the next 21 months, you'll be sitting there for 42 more times, and hopefully you'll be seeing me 42 more times. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Okay, let's, since Mr. Peck is not here tonight, could Ms. Yuha sit? I know you've reviewed the video of our last meeting, so.
Excuse me, Ian, would you ask her on the record if she's reviewed the materials, just to make sure it's in the record?
Yes, do you want to put that in the record?
Yes, I did watch the video.
And you've reviewed all of the evidence that's been put into the record, is that correct?
Yes, I have.
Thank you.
Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, we have Attorney Carey here representing the town. And first we have a continuation of application by Kristen Clark, P.E. for conceptual site plan approval per Connecticut General Statute 830G, affordable housing of a 25-unit age-restricted single and multifamily affordable residential housing development to be located on the northerly side of Boston Post Road on a parcel identified as Boston Post Road, Assessor Map 31.0, Lot 2. Just to note that staff memos have been read in a previous hearing and are in the record. Right now, if Attorney Garrity has any more to add.
I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. You may regret that, but I do. The first thing I'd like to do is just introduce a letter from Art Carlson, President of the East Lyme Land Trust, regarding some of the comments that were made by one of the members of the public as to how this property came into, not into being, but how it came that my client became the owner of this property. You recall that that individual had indicated that this property had been left in a will to the East Lyme Land Trust. I think I told you at the last meeting that that may or may not have been the case. I don't personally know because I've never seen the will for Mr. Tytler, but I am cognizant of a number of the facts that led to that, but the letter reads as follows. Please accept this correspondence as authorization for Jeffrey Torrance to provide the East Lyme Land Trust response in person or in writing to certain claims made at the public hearing regarding the above referenced property. And I think, as I indicated to you, I have a copy of the letter for all the members.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want
Madam
this
Chair-
entered as an exhibit?
Yes, I gave a copy to Mr.
Okay.
Mulholland for that purpose.
Exhibit number
MM,
double M.
MM would be next.
Thank you.
Gotta get my favorite working letter. You taking the yoga?
I'd like a copy, please.
Sure.
Can we get giant copies here, please?
Sure.
Alternates.
And I'd like to, for purposes of tonight, go over just some of the design aspects of the property, and also my client, Ms. Clark's response to a number of the staff comments. So the properties themselves, or the buildings, I should say, if I have them in here, I think I have them. Nope, I don't. They're farmhouse-style duplex units that were chosen to complement the existing single-family residence on the property, which is currently being renovated. The siding color will be white with roof shingles with a weathered wood look. They will match the colors of the materials to the existing residence. Each unit has approximately 1,300 square feet of living space, has 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. Both the existing home and the proposed new duplex are primarily located in an area of existing open space. That part of the parcel has been cleared. I don't know if any commission members have taken a site walk to that, but you would see that there's a substantially large area that is already cleared out from the existing property use. The apartment buildings are chosen for several reasons, which include a low-profile roof line, essentially flat, an exterior color scheme that is intended to allow these buildings to blend into the surroundings. These buildings will be surrounded by mature oak trees and rock outcroppings. The apartments, to be differentiated from the duplexes, will be about 1,000 square feet and will have 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms as well. These buildings are expected to be serviced by an elevator and will be sprinkled. I also have a copy of the application that my client has filed with Ledgelight Health District, and it's dated February 22nd to Wendy Brown Arnold, who is the sanitation professional at Ledgelight. And it reads as follows: attached, please find the following: an 830G site plan, a A2 topographic survey of the subject property, site context plan, Ledgelight Health District site testing application, and the application fee of $150. The enclosed plan depicts 9 buildings, which include 6 duplex, 2 6-unit multi-story buildings, and the existing residence. As evidenced by the working site plan provided, we currently contemplate each building having its own system, although the health approval could be based on upon the so-called state health code system identified in Public Health Code 19-13B104 A through D. While we anticipate the project will be built in 2 phases, we believe and are prepared to obtain septic-related approvals for the entire project as part of the initial phase. I understand that you've asked to be present during the excavation of the test holes, as does our local engineer, Tim May, and as such, I have asked him to coordinate a day convenient with you to accomplish the site testing. Please let me know if there's anything else we can provide to you.
NN.
NN.
One of the issues that came up last week during the presentation was the issue of traffic as it relates to an age-restricted housing development versus an unrestricted age development. My client has since gone back through the traffic analysis documentation that is used by professional engineers to calculate traffic trips. And what she determined from that is that with age restricted, weekday peak hours would be 7 trips entering 7 through 9 a.m. If it is unage restricted, you would have approximately 23 trips, or an additional 23 trips entering during peak hours at 7 to 9 a.m. in the morning. For return trips, you would have a peak with age restricted of 19 and an additional 12 if it is unrestricted in terms of age. So the weekday total with an unrestricted age development would be 229 versus 115 with the age-restricted housing. And I can provide everyone with a copy of these. Pardon? Yeah. So that would be great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have alternates that need to receive all this information also. So,
The other item I'd like to add into the record is a pro forma calculation for rental rates of a 2-bedroom home for a household earning 60% of the Connecticut median income. Tim, if you wouldn't mind passing those out. And what this will demonstrate for you is essentially how we determine the state median income rates, and then the calculation of what units would cost based on that for rental purposes.
PP?
Handing these out. The other item that I mentioned is my client's response to staff comments. It's a memo dated March 13th, 2024 to William Mulholland from Kristen Clark, professional engineer. Subject is 91 Boston Post Road, affordable housing application, response to staff comments. Number 1 is the response to Mr. Close's letter dated March 5th, 2024. With regard to his point 1, she notes that any retaining wall will be engineered to standards that reflect the existence of a flood zone. With regard to the septic systems, she notes that the project will benefit from the design flexibility of the state health code requirements for a state health code system, which is proposed pursuant to Health Code Section 19-13B104A through D. The specific design flexibility allows us to locate an area or areas in which the septic system's leach trench with suitable soils can be utilized in close proximity to each other, and if necessary, to provide the required effluent discharge. Accordingly, it is more likely than not that no leach trench will be constructed in the AE flood zone. I would note that the subject system areas and design for this project will be approved by both Ledgelight Health District and the State of Connecticut Department of Health prior to submission of the final site plan application. With regard to point 2, a note has been added to the revised site plan submitted to the Zoning Commission at their meeting on March 7th, which reads as follows. Note 1, property owner will be responsible for the maintenance, repair of water service, septic systems, private roads, including but not limited to snow plowing, street lights, pedestrian internal access improvements. An operation and maintenance plan will be submitted with the final site plan application for this project, as has been requested. Number 2 is the response to Mr. Garside, the building inspector's memo of February 27, 2024. Mr. Garside provided no written comments. However, he did provide our team with several helpful expectations and requirements he will be looking for in a final site plan application, which we intend to address at that stage of the proceeding. Number 3 is the response to Ben Norths, who is your water and sewer chair, not chair, but director, dated March 6, 2024. Mr. North confirmed the availability of municipal water service for the proposed project and set forth the terms and conditions for our connection to the municipal water supply. Based on the property being outside the sewer shed boundary, it is unlikely that sewer will be available, and even if such service were available, it would not be cost feasible for a project this small. Accordingly, we intend to pursue approval from Ledgelight Health District and the Connecticut Department of Health for on-site wastewater disposal systems of 7,500 gallons per day or less. Number 4 is the response to the inland wetlands agent, Gary Gashel, in his memo dated February 15, 2024. The memo appears to indicate that 2020 PCOD, or Plan of Conservation and Development, would support the location of this project in this location. We note that compliance with the PCOD is not required by Connecticut General Statute 830G, and there's supporting case law available to support this proposition. With regard to the sidewalks, the subject owns only 50 feet of the property west of the existing curb cut. The State Connecticut Department of Transportation, DOT, holds an easement that extends 100 feet north from the Boston Post Road, provided to the Zoning Commission in Binder Exhibit number 9, excuse me. Accordingly, there are several stakeholders that would need to agree to the requested sidewalk extension, including the town of East Lyme and DOT and the adjacent property owner. Next comment is this site is currently envisioned to be designed to generally comply with Section 7.3 of the 2020 Plan of Conservation and Development, in that it is generally free of major site development constraints, as we have avoided proposing any development activities excepting only the existing driveway and stormwater management at the property entrance within 100 feet of any wetlands. The preliminary stormwater documents provided demonstrate rather conclusively our ability to design this project in full compliance with the State of Connecticut DEEP 2023 Stormwater Manual regulations. We have avoided all steep slopes and in fact have proposed an area approximately 8 acres in size, over 75% of the property, that would be subject to conservation easements, or an easement that would prohibit further development activity on the property, which includes wetlands buffers, and rock outcroppings. The claim that this is a de facto zone change is incorrect in our opinion. Our opinion is supported by the case law that involved the East Lyme Zoning Commission in a matter entitled Jag Capital, East Lyme Zoning Commission, case number AC, that's Appellate Court 37924, 2016. And in that particular case, what the court said is that the regulation that you have in the Affordable Housing District is not applicable to 830G applications. In other words, you can't make an applicant who's coming in for 830G apply for a zone change first in order to get an affordable housing application under 830G approved. And that is as opposed to the affordable housing development regulations. The next is we agree that the property is not within town's current sewer shed boundary. My professional opinion is that we will have no issues obtaining a permit from Ledgelight Health District and the State of Connecticut Department of Health pursuant to Section 19-13B104 A through D, as evidenced by the soils map provided to the Commission, Binder Exhibit number 3. The predominant soils on this property are well or moderately well draining with high gravel content. Percolation rates in the soils typically provide 1 inch at 10-minute rates. To his comment number 6, it appears to demonstrate that this project is in compliance with the 2023 Town of East Lyme Affordable Housing Strategy. We note, however, that compliance, again, with this document is not required as a matter of law under Connecticut General Statute 830G. The requirement for plan signature, the plan signature of the delineated wetlands on the site plan and A2 survey is exclusive to an application submitted to the Inland Wetlands Agency, which is yet to occur. As was addressed by myself, and this is my client, Paul Garrity, at the March 7th hearing on this application, no inland wetlands permit or application is required as a matter of law at this juncture, and I would refer you to the letter from Attorney O'Connell regarding the fact that conceptual site plans would not require that because conceptual site plans don't propose any actual work at that point. And to that, I am ad-libbing a little bit. But I would refer you all to Mr. O'Connell's letter that was submitted in the binder last week. She notes that subsequent to the date of Mr. Gaishel's memorandum of February 15th, 2024, Mr. Gaishel was provided with the requested inland wetlands delineation reports and the wetlands function value and impact assessment report, each of which was prepared by soil scientist Joseph Thoreau, that opined that no adverse effects to the wetlands resulting from there would be no adverse effects to the wetlands resulting from the proposed development. These reports are also contained in the binder that I provided you on the 7th, and those are exhibit number 15. She would note that while no stormwater drainage information is required by Connecticut law for approval of a conceptual site plan, pursuant to Connecticut 830G, we have provided the Commission with rather significant information regarding the contemplated stormwater detention and treatment, including the opinion of Mr. May, who is here tonight in the event you have questions regarding the ability of this site to comply with the 2023 State of Connecticut DEEP stormwater management regulations. The requested drainage report, stormwater calculations, and operation and maintenance plan will be provided as part of the final site plan application. An erosion and settlement control plan will be provided as part of the final plan. Number 10 is evidenced by the conceptual site plan and testimony of Mr. May at the 7th hearing on the 24th. Zoning Commission meeting, the left turn out traffic will be prohibited and will be controlled by a raised channelized island, also known as a pork chop island. In addition, I note that the proposed ingress and egress locations provide that the ASHTO, ASSHTO required sightline distance of 350 feet looking east and 335 feet looking west from a distance of 10 feet from the Boston Post Road travel lane at a height of 42 feet. I can provide your commission with the sight line plan now as part of the final site plan application, but our calculations at this point is that we have no issues with meeting any sightline requirements based on that location. What my client's saying is, whatever your preference is, we'll provide it. We can provide it as part of this hearing or subsequent when we come in for a final application, assuming that there's an approval of the conceptual plan. For perspective purposes, the Welcome to East Line sign on the Boston Post Road as you approach Flanders Four Corners traveling west is 363 feet from the center line of the existing curb cut, and the entrance to Flanders Plaza is 341 feet from the same location. A pollution loading analysis will be provided as part of the final site plan application. And that is the only additional information that I have tonight. I have Mr. Torrance here. I did ask him to come down because I think my feeling after listening to the member of the public talk about the prior application was that it left somewhat of a untoward sort of air around the room, and I did want to address that everything involving the acquisition of this property was on the up and up. So if the commission has no objection, I'd ask Mr. Torrance to step up.
Excuse me, before you
Sure.
do, Madam Chair, Haley,
Yes,
I
please.
apologize, I wasn't here last week and I couldn't be, so I'm a little behind, so I have a question. You've applied as a conceptual site plan, is that correct?
Correct, under 830G, not under the Affordable Housing
Under
District.
830G, specifically what section, do you recall? Disappointing.
I don't have it in front of me, but it is under 830G in one of the subsections.
And you're not applying under the zoning regulations, affordable housing, section 32?
Not under 32,
So under
correct.
830G, it allows you to apply for a conceptual site plan, or are you just applying for a site plan? And does it, in your opinion, require a final plan, as is that in the statute?
So the statute says you can apply for a conceptual site plan, and we had this conversation last week. A site plan is a site plan, regardless of how you're looking at it. But that, when I say it's a site plan for site plan purposes, that's for purposes of commencing and closing the public hearing and rendering a decision. But we would have to come back for a final site plan application and then meet all the other requirements for both wetlands, sanitation, traffic, etc. So this is, and I know you weren't here last week, Mr. Mulholland, but what the courts have said with regard to this is that the conceptual site plan is essentially a working tool to allow developers to come in with the commission and get feedback from the commission. We got feedback from staff, which was appreciated. And I appreciate your assistance in setting that meeting up. But nothing in here allows us to go out and put a shovel in the ground. Once we know that the concept is acceptable, then we have to go back and meet all the other requirements of the zoning regulations, the health code regulations, et cetera, and come back into this commission with a more detailed plan, although we believe at this point we've submitted more than we need to, but not enough to get a final approval.
Well, that's kind of my point. So you're still, your position is this is a conceptual site plan, but you're providing an awful lot of information, much of which I would see in a later stage. Our zoning regs call it a preliminary site plan, and then we ask for a final site plan. So you're almost mimicking them, but you're not applying.
We're not there. We're overcompensating at this moment, but we are not where we are to receive a final approval so that we could put shovels in the ground.
And none of us know what the zoning board will do ultimately and what they will decide. But if you were to get an approval, you're still not putting a shovel in the ground until final site plan, and you're telling us that you will be back here, that is your testimony, for a final site plan?
Correct. I mean, we would, if we have, and this is true in anything, we have to do test holes, et cetera. That is all, but you pull a permit for that in any event. And that doesn't allow you to do anything other than do the test holes, which are one of the steps that we'd have to do even if this was a final site plan. So yes, I mean, to the extent there might be a shovel in the ground, it's pursuing those steps that are required to get submit for a final site plan approval.
Okay, thank you. And the title of the property is held by whom at this time?
English Harbor Capital Partners.
Has that been filed in the clerk's office?
Yes.
My understanding is, and I may be wrong, I'm a little slow on the uptake this week, I thought it was still in Tytler's name. Am I mistaken on that?
I have to look. That was a number of months back, but the answer should be no.
And if that's the case, who's authorizing the application?
My client, pursuant to satisfaction of judgment, which was recorded on the land records and indicates that a quitclaim deed was, I think that's, you've just refreshed my memory on this, a quitclaim deed was recorded from the land trust to English Harbor Capital Partners because the land trust obtained the property from Tytla, went to English Harbor Capital Partners who, through the court process, paid the debt off, satisfied the judgment that the bank had to pass title to the bank, or have actually was the way that was set up is the court ordered an auction of the property, and we redeemed shortly before the auction.
Okay, thank you. Attorney Carey, do you have anything to offer at this point on any of my concerns, or will you want to reserve any comment?
No, I don't really have any comments on the concerns. I've got 8-30G, a copy over here.
I don't think we can hear you. Thank you.
I believe the section of 8-30G that Mr. Garrity was referring to is small c in parentheses, any commission by regulation may require that an affordable housing application seeking a change of zone include the submission of a conceptual site plan describing the proposed development's total number of residential units and their arrangement on the property and the proposed development's roads and traffic circulation, sewage disposal, and water supply. So I don't see any other reference in 8-30G to conceptual site plan.
Thank you. I have nothing further, and thank you for that, Madam Chair.
Okay, does the
apologize.
commission
I'd like
have,
to follow up on that
go
last
ahead.
discussion, please.
Yeah,
So, yeah, that's the only reference to conceptual site plan I've ever found in 832. And it seems to refer to town's regulations requiring it, which would seem to me would be the Affordable Housing District chapter. But you say you're not applying under that.
Correct.
We would, even if you did apply under that, it would initiate the process, but it doesn't call for us to approve, deny that, only the final site plan, if I'm reading ours.
I'm sorry, I didn't, Dr. Parvo, I didn't hear the last part of your.
Even if you were applying for conceptual site plan under the Affordable Housing District, it would only initiate, as I understand it, your application. It wouldn't call for us. There's nothing in that section of the East Lyme zoning regulations that says we're to approve a conceptual site plan. It just says it initiates it. It says we may hold a hearing on a preliminary site plan. And so on. So what I'm really worried about is, do we actually have any authority under the law to approve a conceptual site plan? And if we do go ahead and approve, or let's just say conditionally approve or deny, would the conditional or denial allow the applicant to choose to make a appeal under 830G? Because I'd rather avoid that if we can, since we're just trying to informally figure out what are the conditions under which we could find this to be a good idea.
If you deny this application or approve it with modifications that the applicant is unhappy with, they can take an appeal under 8-30G, which will be subject to the burden shifting. In other words, you'll be limited on an appeal to those demonstrating that there's a significant interest that may be harmfully affected, that will override the need for affordable housing. That will be the issues on this appeal. So it will be an 830G appeal.
But under what authority given to us by the state, under 830G or under the zoning statute, or in our local, rules and regulations, under what authority are we authorized to approve or deny or make any decision, give any quote?
8-30G talks about an affordable housing application, and it doesn't have to be a request for a zone change. One might rationalize that if you approve a project that does not meet the underlying zoning regulations because it's an 8-30G application, that you've changed the zone. But that's not. I believe Attorney Garrity is correct when he says his client doesn't have to come in and ask for a zone change, and but I will. I think I just wrote down 5 times Attorney Garrity said they have every intention of coming in here for a final site plan if this is approved as a conceptual site plan. That's what they've said, and it was said several times last meeting as well.
So this is a point of any application. And when you say this final site plan, I assume you mean under our zoning regulations?
They have not applied under the regulations. And
for the site plan?
For anything. My understanding is...
The final site plan, it would be just whatever they decide to make a final site plan.
The final site plan, I assume, would be subject to the conceptual site plan in this application in terms of what the setbacks will be, what the density will be, what the distance between buildings will be. But this is an affordable housing application, and a conceptual site plan is something under the statute that it seems to me was intended to assist the commission in acting on an application for an affordable housing application. But again, I am heartened to hear that the applicant intends to come in for a final site plan. Thank you.
If I can, Dr. Parvo, too, just to address that from our perspective, we do intend to come back for a final site plan. But I want to be clear that an 830G application is not subject to the same regulations that would be subject to any other application that's not affordable housing, including your affordable housing district. There are things you have to consider and can consider, and then there are things that the courts have said you can't consider as part of an 830G. We are aware of those. The memo that I submitted last week has a list of things that you're not able to consider as part of an 830G application. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Good evening. Jeff Torrance from 97 Upper Patagonia Road. Hey. So, Mr. Carlson asked me to come down and just briefly describe or respond to the claims of Ms. Stoddard at last week's hearing. This property was intended by Mr. Teitlow's will to transfer to the East Lyme Land Trust. Unfortunately, it was subject to 3 different mortgages that encumbered the property. And the land trust, as Ms. Stoddard had pointed out, was trying to figure out what to do with the property. They approached a bunch of different people, like Matt Fleischer at the gun club, to try to get them to buy it, others, and nobody was willing to acquire the property. They actually had spoken to Mr. Davis as well. And with time ticking down, a foreclosure judgment had entered in January or December, late December, early January of 2023, with a sale date scheduled for June 6th. Mr. Lewich, who knew my adult children, contacted them and asked them if they would buy it, which required them to pay off the existing debts. They got an executor's deed from the estate with the approval of the probate court. They got a quick claim deed from the land trust because the land trust had an interest per se, just like Mr. Teitlow's sister had an interest in the estate because they were both in his will, and they paid off the debt. The problem was that under Connecticut law, if they have to proceed with the auction, even if you've paid the debt or are prepared to pay the debt, if a certain period before the auction occurs, and that's what happened. They actually took title. They put the money in escrow to pay off the debt. The bank was aware that the money was in escrow to pay off the debt, and they had the ability under Connecticut law to redeem as the equity holder in the property, and that's what happened. So I have, these are all publicly accessible documents that I got online yesterday morning from the court, and it's the docket sheet of the foreclosure case. It includes an appraisal and an affidavit from the appraiser attesting to the value of the property as of May 18th, 2023, of $285,000. It shows that the first mortgage debt was the court file shows that the first mortgage debt was $315,423, and then there's a couple other documents from the court case and a release from Mr. Lewich, who had a $20,000+ third mortgage on the property that was resolved as part of this transaction as well. So there was nothing that occurred that was done that was not lawfully done, and most importantly, I think, to Ms. Stotter's point, is the majority of this property is intended to be kept and preserved in open space. In excess of 8 acres is going to be subject to a conservation easement. So,
Are those documents, are you
For-
wanting
for the
to read
record,
those?
yeah.
Yes.
okay.
You want me to mark them in and put it as an exhibit? So if you want to mark them and pass them over, I'll put them in with the rest of them. But if you do that now, we won't lose track of them. Thank you.
Okay, that's all I have, unless anybody has any questions.
I have one question.
Yeah.
Who controls the property now? English Harbor?
English Harbor Capital, no, the executor's deed was recorded a year ago.
So, the land trust controls it, or
No.
English Harbor?
English
controls all
Harbor
of it?
control. English Harbor controls the property because they're the owner.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And have been since last
Okay.
May.
Does anyone on the commission have any questions for either attorney?
What's going to happen after?
We'll ask the public to speak, and then we can either continue it or close the hearing.
All right, it's questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, just sort it out.
I have a question for Attorney Carey. Just for when we're discussing it, is it legal to put conditions on something if it involves state property?
If they're the applicant for a zoning application, I suppose, but I don't know that the state is subject to any town zoning regulations. I don't understand the question, really.
Just like a sidewalk issue, it would have to, part of it would have to go on state property. Can you put conditions on something with them working with the state to put a sidewalk on it?
So
Yeah.
off-site improvement.
Yes, I think you can, because if this were a zone change, for example, then no, you couldn't condition it on anything happening after the approval. But the condition you're talking about here, I don't think really would be on the state so much as it would be on the applicant. The burden would be on the applicant to come in and demonstrate that it acquired rights to build a sidewalk.
I was just curious.
Okay.
Thank you. Let's go to the public now. Do we have any comments for the project? For the project? We'll get to against later, but okay, yes, ma'am. If you could state your name and address.
Certainly. Good evening. My name is Beth Sibilia. I am the director of the Center for Housing Equity and Opportunity in Eastern Connecticut. We're located in New London at 1 Montauk Avenue. We cover New London, Windham, and Tolland counties. We are a partnership of 7 organizations. Locally, it's the United Way of Eastern Connecticut, the Community Foundation of Eastern Connecticut, Connecticut College, and Eastern Connecticut State University. Statewide, our partners are the Housing Collective and the Partnership for Strong Communities. CHEO relies on data to guide our analysis, with respect to housing, and the data is unequivocal. In New London County, we currently face a $10,000, getting over a little bit of a cold, a $10,000 deficit in homes that are affordable to low-income earners and those on fixed incomes. 24% of the renters pay more than 30% of their income on housing costs. 22% in New London County spend more than 50% of their income on housing costs. In East Lyme alone, a full 46% of the renters are cost burden, meaning they spend between 30 and 49% of their income, and 15% pay more than 50% of their income for housing costs. Today, we find ourselves in the tightest housing market we've ever seen. We've had rents increasing often by staggering amounts. A full 34% of Connecticut residents are renters. According to the report Out of Reach, the average wage to afford an average 2-bedroom apartment is $32.93 per hour. A minimum wage earner will need to work 69 hours per week to afford a one-bedroom apartment. In this application, please bear in mind that the national average for a monthly Social Security payment is $1,767. Or taken back to that hourly wage analysis, for a 40-hour-a-week job, they would be making $10.27 an hour. Is it okay for our seniors to need to go back to work? I met Deborah from Groton recently. Deborah worked 50 years at Lawrence Memorial Hospital in patient transport. 3 years ago, her rent was $1,100. This past year, it was $1,500, and there was a proposed increase at the end of March of $1,800. She has said to me, Beth, at 75 years old, after working for 50 years, I'm going to have to go back to work. I am on a list for senior housing, Beth, but it's an 18-month list. So I urge you to listen carefully to the needs of the potential renters that are not here tonight to speak in favor of this application. I ask you to think about those like Deborah, who shouldn't be thinking about going back to work and instead should be spending time with their grandchildren. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here tonight to speak in favor of the project? Anyone here to speak against the project? Yes, sir. If there are new comments from last week, I know you spoke last week.
Well, I have additional comments.
Okay, thank you. Come on up.
My name is Donald Danella. I reside at 24 Patagonia Drive, East Lyme. I'm an East Lyme Board of Selectmen appointed member of the Niantic River Watershed Committee and the East Lyme Commission for the Conservation of Natural Resources. I've received authorization from both of these bodies to provide statements tonight on their behalf with respect to the 25-unit affordable housing development proposed to be built on a property identified as 91 Boston Post Road. I note that upon the completion of my remarks, I will provide a complete written record of these comments to this Commission's recording secretary. First, I would like to correct several items that were found in the Zoning Commission minutes of March 7th. My last name was not as it appeared, but is spelled D-A-N-I-L-A. I apologize to the Commission's recording secretary for not spelling out my name that evening. Secondly, there was some confusion in the minutes regarding two documents about which I spoke. The first is the Niantic River Watershed Protection Plan, which, as noted in the minutes, cannot be found in the East Lyme Town website, but rather is available for inspections either through Mr. Gary Gashel of East Lyme Town Hall staff or may be viewed electronically. And I'm not going to read out this big HTTPS. You go to the Connecticut website and look for watershed management plans for the Niantic River. I also mentioned a report that I completed on 10 years of water quality monitoring that I performed in the Niantic River tributary streams. This report includes data from stations near the proposed development. Mr. Gashel also has a copy of this report. Alternatively, I can send a PDF copy to anyone interested in it. Just ask me. Now on to the comments that I would like to make tonight about this proposed development. I appreciate the Commission making available the materials spoken about at the March 7th Zoning Commission meeting, but were not available to the public as of that date. I would first like to bring to the Commissioner's attention some statements made by the applicant's representatives found in the March 7th minutes that I believe are not entirely correct or consistent, either with their submitted written materials or the facts on hand. I am doing this not because I believe the applicant and this commission, I am doing this because I believe the applicant and this commission both want to have a full, complete, and honest record. Note that I do not attribute any nefarious motives for these statements, as they just could be honest mistakes or someone just trying to make the best case for their client. First, on page 2, Attorney Garrity was recorded as stating, the area closest to Latimer Brook is to be kept as grass. Yet the applicant's biological consultant, Mr. Joseph Thoreau, gave several statements in his submission, Exhibit W, that indicate otherwise. Quote, the majority of the property is comprised of forested and field uplands. Quote, the 200-foot upland review areas adjacent to the inland wetlands and watercourses are vegetated in the overstory with mixed hardwoods. Quote, the Latimer Brook Palace Shrine, as an aside, I note my dictionary of science states that this word refers to having to do with a marsh or marshy areas. So The Latimer Brook Palestine Forested Wetland Complex lies along the western portion of the parcel. And finally, quote, Latimer Brook flows to the south and is bordered on its east and west sides by a Palestine forested shrub wetlands. A small pond, approximately 1/3 of an acre, lies to the east of the brook. Also found in the applicant's materials in Exhibit K design report was a statement, quote, there are inland wetlands on the property. However, no new activities proposed for any inland wetland or watercourse. Why do I bring this up? There are many troubling inconsistencies here. On page 3 of the March 7th minutes, the applicant's representative stated that, quote, the intention is either donate the open space to the East Lyme Land Trust or put a conservation easement on it in favor of the East Lyme Land Trust. So there's no further development once the development goes in. It was stated at the March 7th meeting and in the materials that 9 to 11 acres of this parcel were to be open space. And now here it comes. Several times during the March 7th public hearing, the minutes show that the applicant's representative stated that, quote, the lower area towards Latimer Brook is intended to be used as a sod farm. This fact is also found in writing in their Exhibit K under open space, where it is stated, quote, the proposed development benefits by being adjacent to 200 plus or minus acres of public accessible open space owned by the New England Forestry Foundation Incorporated. This will provide direct access to the existing trail system for passive recreational purposes. In addition, a portion of the property being utilized as a sod farm and nursery on the western portion of this property will be available for certain open space activities, including the areas around the existing pond and Latimer Brook. Cross-use of the farming roads as trails and a picnic area near the existing irrigation pond are envisioned, end quote. I note that this is the only use of the word nursery that I either heard about or saw in print, so I believe this might have a different connotation than sod farm, perhaps indicating another use for a portion of this land. Although I do not know for sure, I assume farming roads and irrigation pond might refer to past or existing uses on this property. Nevertheless, I object completely to this proposed sod farm and/or nursery. I believe that commercial use is inconsistent with an affordable housing project. I believe it is inconsistent with the concept of open space and the proper uses thereof. I believe it is inconsistent with our town's plan of conservation and development. I believe it's inconsistent with our inland wetlands regulations, which I know is not something your commission has under its purview, but would occur down the line. Finally, and most importantly, I believe a sod farm would result in undue pollution of Latimer Brook and ultimately the Niantic River by using herbicides, pesticides, and fertilizers. Speaking with a professional landscaper, I was told that sod farms necessarily require heavy doses of herbicides and fertilizers to form pure, dense growths of grass. I also believe that this chemical pollution would be exacerbated by the inevitable use of any sod farm or grassy field located near Latimer Brook by non-migratory Canada geese. These birds are the source of considerable E. coli and other bacteria entering our waterways through their droppings. I personally witnessed this occurring at Whitegate Farm located on Patagonia Lake, as well as on many other local waterways. I observed Canada geese present in a nearby Latimer Brook dam impoundment when I sampled water quality there, so I believe these waterfowl would likely quickly find any local preferable food source. My second point of clarification involves the Connecticut Deep Natural Diversity Database Determination, NDDB. It was stated in both the March 7th applicant's presentation and in their Exhibit K design report that, quote, no endangered state or federal listed species or critical habitat exists on the town of East Lyme GIS Natural Diversity Database Area map. This is not so. The NDDB letter provided in their Exhibit W could not be clearer in stating that among the species that might be affected by activities within the proposed project area was the northern long-eared bat, which is both federally and state listed as an endangered species. I do not know if the developer is using any federal funding for this project, but if they do, they are required to make a consultation with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to comply with Federal Endangered Species Act in reference to this bat species. This might result in a required bat survey on this property. Furthermore, the NDDB determination states that 2 state-listed species of special concern are also likely to be found on this property. The wood turtle, for which I've seen photographic evidence of it on a neighboring property, and the smooth green snake. Also, based on my experience as a biologist, I would not be surprised if the ribbon snake, another species of special concern, is found on this property. This is based on its preference for waterside habitats. Regarding the Connecticut listed species, the NDDB determination prescribes strict limitations on the proposed construction of this project, including not removing trees between April 15th and October 31st to protect tree nesting long-eared bat, northern long-eared bat. Land disturbance and excavation in the upland area is confined to the dormant season for wood turtles, which is November 1st through March 31st, and to prevent amphibians and reptiles from access to the developmental area between April 1st and October 31st, there are a number of requirements. Further prescriptions were listed in the determination, including contractors' searches for the wood turtle and education of on-site personnel. These conditions must be adhered to if this development goes forward. I would like to see these requirements followed, as it is important that we protect these and other species used in the site for their habitat. As for other environmental concerns, I refer the Commission and the applicant to the latter's Biological Consultants Report, Exhibit W, which concisely presents the valuable attributes now found on this property with respect to the functions of the existing wetlands, forests, and watercourses. Mr. Thoreau cautions that certain measures should be followed to prevent potential short-term impacts during initial land clearing and construction. On pages 6 and 7 of his report, he presents 4 recommendations to reduce potential impacts from the planned septic systems and the location of stormwater structures, and urges the developer to follow proper construction practices and a strict adherence to the listed NDDB requirements. Sediments entering Latimer Brook are particularly worry here, based on a previous experience we in East Lyme have had with the construction of larger projects, including the Ann Terry Solar Energy Farm in the northern section of town, the nearby Noble gas station, and the ongoing Interstate 95 Connecticut Route 161 reconstruction project, all of which have had instances of erosion and heavy sediment discharges into Latimer Brook or its main tributary, or into the upper Niantic River. Mr. Thoreau also notes that, quote, potential nutrient loads from lawn fertilizers will be insignificant due to overall distance of the lawns from the wetlands. The dense upland shrub and herbaceous vegetation will aid in nutrient uptake, and the existing 100-foot and greater zones in and adjacent to the wetlands will serve as an adequate wildlife corridor and riparian zone, end quote. As for these statements, I must again note an inconsistency, as during the applicant's presentation on March 7th, it was stated that, quote, the area closest to Latimer Brook is to be kept as grass, which will neither result in sufficient removal of nutrients, which might be made worse by a sod farm, nor provide sufficient adequate habitat for the wood turtle, which requires a large home range centered around larger ordered streams and adjacent riparian zones, offering a mosaic of habitats. My final comments are to endorse some of the points made by Gary Gashel, East Lyme's Director of Planning and Inland Wetlands, Director of Planning, and its Inland Wetlands Agent in Exhibit Q. These are to refer this application to the East Lyme Planning Commission, as it is a de facto zoning change. Strengthen the stormwater management system, including preparing a comprehensive drainage or stormwater management report containing an operation and maintenance plan. Prepared an erosion and sedimentation control plan consistent with the 2002 Connecticut guidelines for the same, and perform a pollutant loading analysis for non-point loading of site wetlands and watercourses, particularly Latimer Brook. I also concur with Mr. Gash's concerns about traffic issues that would likely result if this project went forward. Thank you for the opportunity to speak at this public hearing. For your consideration, I've included my written statements in an appendix that presents some useful information taken from the recently revised Niantic River Watershed Protection Plan.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the public that, come on up.
Can I just ask one quick clarification for the gentleman?
Sure, go ahead.
If I followed you correctly, the timing is the critical issue with respect to protecting species?
The NDDB, yes. And I've seen this in other projects where they prescribe construction activities to avoid interfering with life history issues with the listed species.
Proper buffers, but otherwise it might be possible to fit the site in harmony with the critters. If it's well done.
Certainly, if it's well done, and that's my whole point too, and I want to make although, Madam Chairman, you asked who's for and against. I am not against affordable housing. What I am for is affordable housing and any other development to be done responsibly and with respect to the environment and other issues that we have in our town.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman? And I just suggest that the
Attorney
commission,
Carey, for the record.
that the commission ask this gentleman for his professional credentials, education
I thought
background.
he
If he already did, then that's
he
fine.
stated, but go ahead.
I have a Bachelor of Science degree in Biological Sciences from Cornell University, graduating in 1969. Master's degree in Biology, graduating from Rutgers University in 1975. I worked over for 10 years as an environmental consultant dealing with power plants and other issues in southern New Jersey, followed by 30 plus years at the Millstone Environmental Lab as a fisheries biologist, where I also testified for the MPDS permit hearing on behalf of the station, as well as in civil court.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Deb Mosier-Dunn. I also have copies of everything for the secretary. And I am the president of Save the River, Save the Hills. And I also, one of my other hats is I'm on the Waterford Land Trust Land Acquisition Committee. And just for the record, East Lyme Land Trust did not reach out to us. We didn't know about this property, and had we known about it, we might have been interested in it. Anyway, I just heard about that tonight, so I thought I'd say that. So putting my hat back on as Save the River, Save the Hills president, I would like to read the following into the record, and I will give a copy of this letter to the zoning board. Dear Commissioners, I am writing regarding the proposed development at 91 Boston Post Road, East Lyme. Save the River, Save the Hills is a local nonprofit environmental organization, and it has concerns about newly proposed developments within the Latimer Brook watershed, the largest tributary to the Nyack River estuary. As you know, the Nyack River estuary and bay remain on the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection DEEP. The latest one was the 2022 list of impaired water bodies. For impaired habitat for marine life, other aquatic life, and wildlife. Latimer Brook itself is also listed as an impaired water body for recreation due to E. coli, which we were talking about with the geese in the brook. Save the River, Save the Hills has been testing water quality of the river in conjunction with Save the Sound in a program called the Unified Water Study, which is collecting water quality data on abatements throughout the Long Island Sound. We are finding high nitrogen levels and very high bacterial level counts in the Nyack River after heavy rainstorms. These are levels of bacteria much higher than would close a beach if it were measured by the state. A recent report issued by the Nyack River Watershed Committee found that although Latimer Brook currently has a water quality consistent with supporting desirable aquatic life forms, increasing water temperatures have made the brook less suitable for cool water species such as trout. The study also demonstrated that nitrate and nitrogen concentrations increase when proceeding downstream from Latimer Brook's source to the dam just upstream of its entrance into the Nyack River. This increase in nitrate concentration was attributed to increasing septic and stormwater sources along the brook. As such, Save the River is concerned about any developments having the capability of increasing nutrient and bacterial concentrations in the brook and the river. These sources must be reduced to the maximum amount possible by using state-of-the-art engineering, designs, and practices for both stormwater and septic discharges. The old development and stormwater mitigation rules assume that the solution to pollution is dilution, and that is no longer feasible. The Nyack River estuary is dealing with what could be a death by 1,000 cuts as development continues to take down forests and other natural water cleansing areas within the watershed. As climate change increases the amount of rainfall in each rain event, more and more sources of pollution are entering tributary streams and the river downstream as they are carried along with stormwater. Save the River is advocating that the town of East Lyme ensures that the stormwater from any new development is treated and cleansed before it enters any tributary to the Nyack River. We advocate that true low-impact development practices are implemented, not hybrids or half-done greenwashed approaches to cleansing stormwater. And we ask that all development plans focus on stormwater mitigation during all phases of development, not just the finished product. The construction phases, as Don talked about, were when major damages have been seen on tributaries to the Nyack River. And finally, after the development is up and running, we would like to see requirements for the upkeep of stormwater mitigation applications. Similarly, we urge that the most up-to-date septic system system designs, including those that reduce nutrient discharges, be required for this and other developments proposed for locations near the Niantic River and its tributaries. Specifically in the area of this proposed development, we have witnessed that with the recent blasting and current work for the reconstruction of Interstate 95, after rain events, the Niantic River has had silt flowing down from Latimer Brook, making the river brown for weeks at a time. I've personally noticed this. Save the River Board was alerted by one of its members who took a video of the silt discharge back in August. We noticed the Connecticut Deep, who responded and tightened up some of the stormwater mitigation by the brook. But with the ongoing construction and the major rain events of 2, 3, and even 4 inches of rain becoming more prevalent, it is more important than ever to maintain the Niantic River watershed forests that are protecting our waterways by cleansing the water before it hits brook streams and the river itself. The proposed development is on a property that is mostly forested with steep topography, sending its stormwater directly into Latimer Brook. Therefore, regarding this proposed development, Save the River asks the Commission to pay attention to the following. The proposed development is on a parcel that is designated number 10 out of 69 properties that the town of East Lyme has determined within its plan of conservation and development as proposed open space on table 2 of that document, having a total of 13 points for natural resource points that include water access, active and passive recreation, forest block, greenway, unique geological features, and cultural historical elements. The property appears on the town's open space vision as part of the 30% open space goal within the town and has proposed footpath running right through it that connects up through the Route 11 Greenway. The property is designated to be on the stratified drift aquifer on the town of East Lyme's open space plan and proposed footpaths map. And I have all those maps. You can have a copy of those. Each year, Latimer Brook is stocked with trout by deep. Last year, this agency released 1,965 trout into the brook, including brook trout, brown trout, tiger trout, and rainbow trout. Just below this property, near the Latimer Brook Dam fish ladder, and just above it at Egret Road, among other locations along this brook, Latimer Brook. Clean water with gravel bottoms, not silt, are necessary for keeping trout alive and thriving. Brook trout especially need well-oxygenated waters to survive. According to DEEP, the portion of Latimer Brook a few miles upstream of the property was sampled by electrofishing last year. The fish community was comprised of American eel, bluegill, brook trout, black-nosed dance, brown trout, chain pickerel, largemouth bass, tessellated darters, white suckers, and yellow perch. The health of this stretch of the brook is especially crucial for those species of fish that migrate upstream from the brackish and salt waters farther down in the Niantic River estuary. This includes both I knew I was going to say this wrong. Thank you. Anadromous alewife and the sea run strain of brown trout. Connecticut Deep installed and maintains a fish ladder just downstream from this property for these migrating fish, which spawn in upstream areas of Latimer Brook before returning to the Niantic River estuary and then back to the sea. The catadromous American eel has an opposite lie history strategy from the alewife, with a very small young called elvers ascending freshwater streams in early spring. They remain as stream residents for period of many years before migrating out during fall months to eventually spawn in the Sargasso Sea in that region of the Atlantic Ocean. Based on Connecticut Deep fish surveys, American eels form a considerable portion of the fish biomass of Latimer Brook. Over its entire range in North America, the American eel has undergone severe reductions in population size and is being considered for listing as a threatened species by Connecticut Deep. The list of species that use Latimer Brook and its riparian area's habitat is not limited to fishes, but also many amphibians and reptiles. We note that Deep's natural NDDB for this property include the wood turtle, a species of concern in our state. An adjoining property owner has photographic evidence of that species is present along this segment of the Latimer Brook. The applicant must be required to follow the recommendations made by the NDDP determination and by its wetlands consultant for construction activities should this project go forward. After our reading of professional, we hired Steve Trinkus to review the applicant's conceptual design. His review of that, I'm not going to read, but it'll be attached to this letter for you to all read. We had the following concerns until Attorney Garrity came up with the number of bedrooms. We originally said the number of bedrooms per unit were not clear, but he just said there are going to be 2 units, 2 bedrooms and 2 baths per unit. The number of parking spots, along with the pollutants that come from cars, antifreeze, windshield wiper fluids, gas, and oil, except for if you're having electric vehicles, is dependent upon the number of bedrooms being proposed. So this, and the size and shape of the septic tanks as well as who will be responsible for approving it, because if you go over certain number of gallons, Ledgelight will not be the one reviewing it. The State Health Department and DEEP will be looking at it, and they are dependent upon a number of bedrooms proposed in this conceptual plan. The topography has the developer proposing the septic tanks on the west side of the proposed duplexes to be on the downhill side of a retaining wall. How will they properly be pumped out every 3 years, which is a requirement, or they're supposed to be, if they're on the other side of a retaining wall downhill towards Latimer Brook? If soil sampling has not been done, how can the developer design stormwater mitigation and know what they need to do to actually clean water without knowing what the soils will run through? And for the record, gravel does not clean water before it hits a brook. Why are 6 of the proposed septic systems within the AE flood zone? Now, Attorney Garrity just said that they're not. Let's hope they're not, because an AE designation gives a 1% chance every year that the area will be flooded, and it's a 26% chance over 30 years, according to most flood insurance websites, that the area will be flooded and the septic tank systems will be compromised, and all that contaminated runoff would be directly into Latimer Brook. We also expect that no additional nitrogen will be allowed to be added to the Nyack River from this property. The idea of a sod farm within an AE flood zone with all the fertilizers, pesticides used in such a production is simply horrifying to advocates for the health of the brook and the river. The conclusion of the professional engineer's review, which I've added to this letter for the commissioner's analysis, along with his CV, states, quote, "It is my professional opinion that the submitted plans and documents are not adequate to determine if this is an appropriate use of this site, even on a conceptual basis. The life of the Nyack River estuary and its tributaries is in the hands of the commissions of the towns in which, the life of the Nyack River estuary and its tributaries is in the hands of the commissions of the towns within its watershed. Save the River is asking that you make protecting the areas that produce clean water for the river and its tributaries a priority as you evaluate this application. Thank you for considering our comments as you proceed in your examination of this proposed housing project. I have included the tables and maps I referred to in this packet. I'm leaving that with the secretary tonight. We remain available for any clarifications and further discussions of our comments concerning the application. On behalf of the Board of Directors and our membership, I'm signing this. Deb Mosier, done.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Is there anyone else from the public tonight wanting to speak? Yes.
You can submit that. I'll make a record copy. Thank you.
This is the whole thing.
Yeah, if you want to give it all to me.
Hello, my name is Henry Davis, 50 Brockett Road. I'd like to read from a settlement agreement dated February 11th, 2015, and I do understand that this does not apply to Kristen Clark P. Quote, "For a period of 20 years, they will not directly or indirectly, under any circumstance or conditions whatsoever, 1, purchase any new or additional property in town of East Lyme, 2, file any land use permit applications, or 3, otherwise engage in development in the town of East Lyme, whether individually or as a corporation, partnership, director, officer, clerk, principal agent, employee, trustee, or in any relation or capacity whatsoever." In regards to the purchase of 91 Boston Post Road, allow me to read from a small claims suit from the New London Small Claims Court dated December 22nd, 2023. In this quote, "In this complaint, the plaintiff seeks damages in an amount of $5,000 as a result of the defendant's violation of the Connecticut General Statute 49-8, as more specifically detailed as follows. Number 1, on September 11th, 2012, the defendant's predecessor recorded a mortgage in volume 891, page 711 of the town of East Lyme land records against property known as 91 Boston Post Road, East Lyme, Connecticut, now owned by the plaintiff. Now if I read from the small claims written notice of suit regarding who the plaintiff is, the plaintiff name is English Harbor Capital Partners, LLC, address P.O. Box 452, East Lyme, Connecticut, and the email attached to the plaintiff is jtorra, J-T-O-R-R-A, 5608@gmail.com, and at the bottom of the document it is signed by the plaintiff, signed Jeffrey Torrance with his signature present. Given that this is a legal document relating to the purchase of 91 Boston Post Road, I believe this is sufficient evidence that Jeffrey Torrance is connected with English Harbor Capital Partners, LLC, and has broken the 2015 settlement agreement with the town of East Lyme. I would recommend that further legal action should be considered before continuing with the decision on the preliminary site plan approval. My second point is that the connection to New England Forestry Trails, I'm curious to how exactly they will connect with the New England Forestry Trail. If you look at the property lines of 89 Boston Post Road and 91 Boston Post Road, it is clear that the only entry to the 200 acres of open space from 91 Boston Post Road is by trespassing through the private property of 89 Boston Post Road, owned by Andrew Davis. I believe this should be a concern to the Commission, as the question of how the 55-plus residents will enjoy recreation has been brought up on numerous occasions. And my final point is that I believe that it's unethical for a professional engineer to be the applicant for a development of a property that he or she owns while simultaneously conducting business as a hired professional engineer responsible for creating plans, traffic reports, and fulfilling other duties of a PE based on the National Society of Professional Engineers. There are numerous similar cases in which the Ethics Board had found it unethical to act in this way without first taking all the necessary and reasonable steps to disclose all potential conflicts of interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the public here tonight? Yes, ma'am. And you have new comments?
I have new comments.
Okay.
Amy Stoddard for Oriole Circle, East Lyme, Connecticut. My new comments are, I'm heartsick. The forest where those bats might be living, leveled. It's not digging, but I don't know how you can level it before anything's pre-approved or approved. I'm sick. I have a picture of that wood turtle. I don't know if anybody needs to see it from the property. We also have footage on a video of the coyote pack. Hopefully the high school won't be in lockdown again from the black bear that hangs out in the area. I did go to look at the will again that my signature's on, and I'm sick about that too, because an 81-year-old man was promised that his debt would be paid by a hot rod, a car, everything in his house and his house, so the property could be part of the East Lyme Land Trust. And I'm sick that I was there to support a friend, and it did not happen. And now the forest is leveled. It's just sickening that this has happened and we're at this point. So I just wanted to word it again. And I don't understand how it happened. I understand everyone went through the loopholes they needed to go through to legally purchase a property that was during an auction, but it's sickening that it happened. And it was the president of the East Lyme Land Trust, that an 80-year-old man met at a car show and for 4 years told that his property could be donated, and most of those mortgages were slowly being paid off by the president of the East Lyme Land Trust. So he knew about the back taxes, about the mortgages, and that's what I'm here to say. Sorry. Thank you. Good luck. Thank you for hearing me.
Quickly, please.
Sure. Sorry.
Level? Is this a recent event? Is this something?
I think I heard things happening a couple days ago. I don't know when it happened, but we're still feeding, and I thank you for letting us feed the barn kitty. But we're still feeding the cat, and today the other fellow that feeds the cat said, "Don't be shocked, Amy, when you go to feed the cat," but it's a huge chunk of the forest is cleared. Sickening sorry. Thank you for your time.
Does either attorney want to respond to any of the public comments?
I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll try and go in order of the speakers. With regard to comments from the first gentleman, the NDDP report number did find the bat, and it has recommendations, and we have to contact the state before any construction. Same with the box turtle. They outline the manner and times of construction in order to avoid disturbing the habitat, because they migrate across the property, and the steps to take during construction in order to ensure that no turtles are in the area that may be under construction. So we're well aware of that. We're also very cognizant of the comments the commission had last week about the sod farm. I've had discussions with my client about that. So when we talk about the Thoreau report, the Thoreau report is referring to existing conditions, that there is forested area along the riverbank, all right? The idea of the sod farm would have resulted in clearing some of that, but I can pretty much guarantee you that the final application is not going to have a sod farm on it at this point in time.
I'm just going to interrupt, and wouldn't you agree that a sod farm or a landscaping company also needs zoning permits in a completely different subject?
Without looking at your regulations,
The answer
now,
is yes.
if Mr. Mulholland is saying that it would, I will accept his representation tonight for purposes of that. I might, but I do want to reserve the ability to disagree if after reading the regulations I don't necessarily agree with his opinion. One thing I'd like to point out anecdotally, and it gets to Attorney Sebelia's comment, so I was driving over here listening to NPR. One of the things they talked about was housing and the typical thing, what we've seen where housing opens up because people like me retire, sell, and move. People 60 plus own 40% of the housing stock in the United States. And the person who they were interviewing is saying, that ain't happening anymore where we sell, because it's too expensive to move elsewhere, and therefore you're going to have this sort of block on younger people being able to move up into what is basically, you know, the idea of generational wealth, where I can buy a house, make money on it when I sell it, transfer that to my kids. So when we look at this for affordable housing, it's one of the key things. When I just moved last year with my wife, one of the things we looked at was, what about renting at this point in time? And we said, without, you know, it doesn't make sense, because it's just way beyond what anybody in their right mind would pay for units that are going in at market rates. In Middletown, it's $38,000 a year for an apartment, a new apartment with amenities, but it doesn't get you everything else you need. So it's just something to consider when somebody said the other day, well, you know, why are we doing this for old people? I don't know if they use that word, but we are old people. So I'll, you know, talk about the elephant in the room. There's a reason, because there are people who are 60 plus who are looking for moving out of an existing property where they have to maintain it all, and are looking for something that's affordable. And even that's not out there for somebody in those positions. So getting back to the comments of that gentleman, however, as I said, Mr. Thoreau's talking about the existing conditions, so I don't think that's necessarily inconsistent with what we were proposing, but we've heard your comments regarding the sod farm on that. In terms of the endangered species on there, as our report, which we commissioned through them, granted we were required to do it, but we did it, and we've got the comments and recommendations from the state of Connecticut Department of Environmental Protection. With respect to Ms. Mosier-Dunn's comments on here, the design of the septic is going to have to meet the current state regulations on that. So we're going to design that system in accordance with current state regulations. We're also going to do our best to minimize any adverse impact on this, but one of the things that you're going to have is, and you can't prevent this, is that wherever you have development, you're going to have some level of consequence. We will design this as required by the law, given the latest, and the latest in terms of design standards for stormwater management, et cetera, are the 2023 regulations that were passed. I also want to point out one thing regard to her comment that this is number 10 on the town's open space list. I'll tell this to everybody in this room. If you're counting on this town to protect open space, forget it. I represented the land trust 3 or 4 years, but it's probably pre-pandemic at this point, with regard to the Hathaway property. That's been number one for 20 plus years on the town's preservation list. And the town did absolutely nothing for 20 years. They only recently acquired it, and that was after one of my other clients purchased it and then negotiated with the town about transferring that property to them after they paid off the existing debt on that. The other thing, too, is respect to the next, actually, a much larger parcel of land up on Walnut Hill, 305 acres, was again land that was protected by one of my clients as part of a development in hand with the land trust and a developer, which is something that people are starting to look at. Developers need to be able to recoup the cost of acquiring these properties, and they're doing that in conjunction with affordable housing projects or in conjunction with land trust. As long as they can develop a portion of the property, they're willing to put it in open space or conservation. And we did that on Walnut Hill, 305 acres. And they did that on the Hathaway property. As I said, that the town has, for years, said it's the #1 priority. But I recall specifically a member of the public asking me when we did the presentation over at the library, why hasn't the town done anything? I said, I can't answer that. You need to talk to your town officials about that. But I know how towns operate. It's slow. It wasn't under pressure because the Hathaway family owned it. It wasn't until the Hathaway family, who was in litigation for 10 years over selling that property, finally sold it to one of my clients that the town came to the table and ponied up and stepped up to the plate. With regard to septic issues, I'll ask Mr. May to address those comments, but I think the fact is that we're going to have to follow the most current regulations, and we're going to design these things in order to minimize any possible pollutants making it to the river. With that said, I have not seen the Trinkus report. Mr. Trinkus, I believe, has a PhD in this area, and I would ask the commission to keep, I haven't seen the other gentleman's reports or the documents that he references in there, but I would ask the commission to keep that open so that I may obtain copies and provide them to my professionals on this in order to get their, response to the comments in the reports. The other issue is that Mr. Trinkus has said that even under a conceptual, this part I can address without sending it to our professionals, but the fact that the project as it stands today is not detailed enough to even for a conceptual plan, and I vehemently disagree with that because that's not what the law is at this point in time. We didn't even have to provide many of those reports that Mr. Trinkus is looking at. We did provide it because we want to get this out front so that when we come in with a final application, assuming that there's an approval here, we know what we're looking at and what the concerns are from this commission and from the public, frankly. So I would disagree with Mr. Trinkus on that point because I think he's making a legal conclusion and he's not competent to make such. With regard to the gentleman's comments about the small claim action and so forth, Mr. Torrance did file that, and the purpose of filing that was because in order to close on that transaction, the lender's attorney refused to deal directly with English Harbor Capital Partners because they're not a law firm, and they wanted representations from an attorney saying that not from just an individual or private entity saying we have the money available. They wanted something from a law firm that said the money's in your account. When we give you a payoff letter, which was like pulling teeth from these people, you can wire that money to us and we'll provide you with a release and a satisfaction of judgment. They provided the satisfaction of judgment. Despite numerous requests by me in writing, we never got the release of the mortgage on there. And there's a specific statute in the Connecticut General Statutes that allows you to put on notice a mortgagee, which is a lender, that they are in violation of that statute, and then they get penalized for every week that they don't release the mortgage. That was the whole purpose behind that particular lawsuit, and I can guarantee you, or I can tell you that once that lawsuit was filed, that release was forthwith coming on that. So, for that reason, I'd like to ask the commission to, and I know you're under a deadline here, but I would ask the commission to at least keep this open so that if we have any comments, we can provide those, or any rebuttal to these two reports, we can do that. In the off chance that you don't continue the public hearing, I would point out that if the public hearing is closed tonight, you may not look at the articles that the gentleman who spoke first referred you to in his letter because that will be outside the record. Thank you.
Madam Chair, before Mr. Gary sits down, I just have a couple very brief points that I wanted to ask. Your application shows the conceptual site plan as affordable housing development, correct? And this was a comment on the side farm, et cetera, but that's off the table. Is that correct?
I don't want to say it's off the table, but we're having discussions on that, and it's, I'm hearing that.
They're commercial entities, so it's probably a different conversation.
Right. It's
not
not
an
going
affordable
to.
housing application.
I don't think we envision it now being part of the final application.
Before final site plan, you would need a wetlands permit?
Yes.
And you would be applying to one. And on the final site plan, don't you agree that would be a public hearing by this commission?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you for that. And I think I have one last question. Is somebody up there clear cutting and farming trees? That we were aware of that are a part of the English Harbor operation?
I'm not aware that anybody's cutting anything up there. The house is being renovated, but I know that Mr. Gaishel and Mr. Carlson walked the property this morning, I believe.
I'm not aware if there's a permit out for renovation of that home. Just does that ring a bell with you?
Let me put it this way. I don't know what the extent of the renovation is. I know it was being cleaned out because there was a ton of material.
I would ask that you investigate and report in the
Happy to do so.
Thank you, sir. I have nothing further. Thank you.
Attorney Carey, do you have any additional comments?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Does the
Question is, am I allowed to ask a question?
can you do it quickly?
Yeah, two questions. One is, what percentage of this is affordable? Is that in the
30.
It is 30%? Okay. And then the other question is, what statute is the zoning commission going to make an approval of a conceptual design on? Is that, I mean, this whole thing is like it's a new.
830G.
830G.
It's been around since 1980.
Well, for affordable housing, but an approval of the conceptual design?
Right. Would come under
It's on
830G. Right. And then we have to come back in with the full-blown plan.
Right. But I'm saying that.
Okay. We need to keep moving. We need to keep moving on. Mr. May, did you have anything for tonight, or?
I kind of did. I wanted to address a couple of about the stormwater runoff, because when you get into the 2023 stormwater manual, the whole purpose, they went from, it used to be 1 inch of rainfall over the entire area had to be captured, the water quality volume. That's since changed in 2023 to 1.3 inches. In the conceptual drawing I have, I need approximately 570 feet of trenched drains. They don't have an outlet, so it would capture the entire 4,300 cubic feet of stormwater need to be stored. And the reason that's important is because right now all the stormwater runs through the woods. At this time of year, you have the most erosion, the sedimentation in the woods, because the raindrop or the erosion is the worst. So right now you have literally untreated, runoff from all the animal feces or whatever. With the incorporation of this collection system, we're going to capture that 1 inch rainfall, which is 90% of the rainfalls that's going to happen. It's an instantaneous 1.3 inch over the entire. So that's stored. That stays in the trench, the stone trenches that I had in my presentation. And so that'll slowly drain away within 48 hours. That's a requirement. And so that's important because even if somebody was using fertilizers or whatever, it's going to be captured and stored there, and it's not going to be running down into Latimer Brook. So that was a really important feature. I was really that. Well, I mean that's the law. We have to change the entire.
No, I know.
Over here.
But I mean, but I just wanted to say that that's the requirements, and we're adhering to that. Then furthermore, I also have conceptual, the detention pond and the infiltration swells to treat the stormwater runoff. So it's above and beyond. So not only, and it's also going to slow down the water velocity to the standards that's required for all the storm events, and the actual volume of water will be reduced substantially. So that's going to help with the temperature rising in the streams and stuff, because you're removing the water and infiltrating it. So I just want to say that that was incorporated into this stormwater plan. So, and you know, I was a part of several water quality studies here in East Lyme and in different areas, and I was helped work on the 2004 stormwater quality manual when I was working for several companies and gave input. So I have a lot of investment in that stormwater quality manual, and I understand it pretty well. So, and this is a good application of that. And so it's, you know, as far as where the development is going to be, is far away from the brook as possible. You know, so that was another concern I had on the design. And then furthermore about the parking is the minimum requirement, 2 spaces for each unit. So that's the national and state and also the probably the town standard as well. But I'd love to reduce the parking, but that's kind of what is bestowed on a basic design premise. So so that's pretty much the design. But as far as I know, is that whole area from where down below is not going to be disturbed at all. It's just going to be left natural as possible.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
given that this is a conceptual plan, the final plan will require great detail, construction grade detail, so there's still a long way to go because this is conceptual and you'll need to provide additional information that'll be reviewed by our engineering department and other disciplines, so there is a way to go, and there should be a number of refinements forthcoming.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I might suggest that we continue the hearing, but again, it's up to the commission. We have next week. We can continue it too.
I will share that I've reserved this room for next week, same time, same place, next Thursday, in anticipation of, and I also add, we'll probably be meeting every week for the next several weeks because of the workload. So stay tuned.
Do I have a...
Sure. Would Mr. May be in attendance? Because I have a couple of questions for Mr. May.
Mr. May, will you be in attendance next week? Would you be in attendance next week?
I believe so. I haven't even looked at my calendar, to be honest with you.
Good point.
20th?
I have a pretty simple question, if I can ask Mr.
Sure.
21st. You referred to it, I think, in terms of, you were referring to standard 2 about runoff quantity control, I think, in your last remarks. But a week ago, I didn't hear anything about that. So with respect to controlling the 2-year, 10-year, 100-year, is that baked into the plan?
It has to be.
It has to be. So
by design.
You're going to come back with a...
Well, it's
as to that.
Up to the 25-year storm, you have to, you know, control. But after that, it's show that you are attempting to. It's got a funny word. It's like, you know, but anything that stores water has to be 100-year storm design. Anything that conveys stormwater is 10 years design. So it's
potentially control 100% of the
that's right.
24-hour
That's right.
flow
Potentially
required by the review authority. That's what you're referring to.
Right.
Yeah. And given the sensitivity of the site, my question will be whether that is an appropriate standard to.
Absolutely.
Achieve
I've already looked
the
into
100
it.
year, the 100 year.
I'm already looked into
You're
it.
looking into that. Okay.
No, I've already looked
You
into
looked
it.
into that. And with that, are you going to look at the use of greater than 24-hour precipitation depths, such as the upper bound of the 90% confidence interval, to account for larger and more intense observed storm events in the future?
I'm not following you. You're bound. The state has adopted the
2023.
2023, which is the
24.
The NOAA Atlas 14.
That's it. No Atlas 14.
But
and it's,
I'm just quoting the.
Well, but it's already in there, and it's the stormwater profile of intensity, and it's still the same as the one for 2004, the Type 3 24-hour intensity. They've got another name, but they have gauging stations all over the state that show what it is. There's not one for East Lyme, and I can use, but there is one for the state and this area.
I'll show you this specific section of the water quality.
Well, you're asking for a different storm.
If we could, is there?
She wants me to move on. It basically is saying that the NOAA Atlas 14 is being reviewed, and the size of the 100-year storm may well be 30% larger.
It already is. That's what's incorporated. That's the whole point of the going to the 2023 is it's 30% more.
That's
due to climate.
That's the 1.3.
That's the climate change that they took into account.
No, well, we don't want to get into this.
Well, you're asking, so I'm telling you, they've already taken into consideration of the increase in stormwater intensity.
Okay,
I'll give you more details.
do you want to make a motion?
Can I make a motion here?
Yeah, sure.
Could I just,
Could you fill
No.
us in on how we're doing with the time frame, timeline?
Well, that's why I'm asking if we can have a motion. We can continue this discussion next week. We have a regular meeting after this.
Madam
so-
Chair, I suggest you get a
A
motion.
certain number of days?
Yeah, we have that under control.
Next week, yes, that's
Have a
under
meeting next
control.
I suggest you continue to next week, Madam
Yeah,
Chair.
move to continue this hearing until a week from tonight.
I second it.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain?
Madam Chair, I would ask that you take a 2-minute break.
I was just going to say that. Thank you. Okay, round two. We're moving on to our regular meeting. We have the approval of minutes of March 7th and
Yeah, move to approve as submitted.
Second.
do you have any comments about I think the man said his name was spelled incorrectly and a few others? Okay. You want to make it approved with changes?
Well, I think we have some spelling stuff, minor stuff.
Okay. Do you want to change the motion to approve with spelling changes?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, no abstentions. Before we proceed, we have a quick reminder from Attorney Zamarka. I'll read really quickly before we get into the next item. This was a memo he sent to Mr. Mulholland. As with any application in deciding on an affordable housing site plan application, the Commission must carefully consider all evidence in the record. The Affordable Housing Statute requires the Commission to make specific findings. If the Commission denies an affordable housing application, it is likely that the applicant will appeal to the Superior Court. The statute shifts the burden on appeal to the Commission, not the applicant. In affordable housing appeals, the trial court determines whether the record establishes that there is more than a mere theoretical possibility, but not necessarily a likelihood of a specific harm to the public interest if the application is granted. If the court finds that such sufficient evidence exists, then it must conduct a complete review of the record and determine independently whether the Zoning Commission's decision was necessary to protect substantial interests in health, safety, or other matters that the Commission legally may consider, whether the risk of such harm of such public interest clearly outweighs the need for affordable housing, and whether the public interest can be protected by reasonable changes to the affordable housing development. Avalon Bay Communities Incorporated versus Zoning Commission of Town of Stratford, 2007, 931A.2D, 879.284, Connecticut 124. If the Commission does not satisfy the burden, the court shall wholly or partly revise, modify, remand, or reverse the denial. For purposes of affordable housing appeals, sufficient evidence means evidence in the record of a quantifiable probability that a specific harm will result if the application is granted. Mere concerns alone are insufficient. The Commission's burden on appeal is high. For example, traffic volume is not a substantial public interest, but traffic safety may be where there's a quantifiable basis for such a finding. The mere possibility of harm to an important public interest is not a valid reason for denying an affordable housing subdivision application. Carr versus Planning and Zoning Commission of Town of Bridgewater, 273 Connecticut, .573, 2005. Similarly, a municipality's own affordable housing regulations cannot be a substantial public interest in affordable housing land use appeal. Town Close Associates versus Planning and Zoning Commission of Town of New Canaan, 42 Connecticut, App .94, 1996. Regardless of the public interest, the burden is on the Commission to balance the actual harm to the interest against the need for affordable housing in municipalities not otherwise exempt, like East Lyme. The need for affordable housing is presumed. So we will have the continuation of application of Bride Lake LLC for site plan approval for the modification of the December 3rd, 2020 approval of an 80-unit affordable multi-family housing residential development pursuant to Connecticut General Statute 830G, increasing the total unit count to 100 multifamily units on the westerly side of North Bridebrook Road, 20.24 acres, now bearing street number 94, Assessor Map 9.0, Lot 37-2.
I make a motion that we approve this affordable housing site with the plan modifications. The whole thing?
You would have to read the whole motion.
Whereas on November 14th, 2023, Bride Lake LLC, the applicant filed an application for site plan modification of the December 3rd, 2020 approval of an 80-unit affordable housing multifamily residential development pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes 8-30G, increasing the total unit count to 100 multifamily units on the westerly side of North Bridebrook Road, 20.24 acres, now bearing street number 94, Assessor Map 9.0, Lot 37.2, application. And whereas application was not submitted pursuant to 32 of East Lyme zoning regulations, but rather pursuant to the Wisnowski versus Berlin Planning Commission, 37 Connecticut, App 303, 1995, and whereas the Commission is required to make an appropriate findings under the Affordable Housing Statute CGS 8-30G, and whereas the Commission received a referral reports from Bill Shear, Deputy Director of Public Works, and Acting Town Engineer Gary Geschel, Inland Wetlands Agent Planning Director, and Ben North, Chief Operating Officer, and whereas the applicant has applied for and received from East Lyme Water and Sewer Commission an allocation of 35,400 gallons per day of sewer treatment capacity, and whereas the Commission has held 2 public hearings on the application during which it listened to numerous hours of testimony. Approximately 31 exhibits were submitted by the applicant and various agencies and individuals for consideration during the hearing process. In making its decision, the Commission is considering and taking into account all of the testimony and exhibits exhibited at the hearing on the application. And whereas for the purpose of this affordable housing application, the Commission will address this motion as follows. A, we request for approval of an affordable housing development site plan modification to increase total number of units from 80 to 100. The request for approval of a final site plan, whereas the Commission finds and recognizes that there is a need for affordable housing in the town of East Lyme and that less than 10% of its available housing stock meets the statutory definition of affordable housing, and whereas the applicant is applying for approval of a affordable housing site plan pursuant to Wisnowski versus Berlin Planning Commission 30 Connecticut 303 1995, and whereas the Commission is required to make appropriate findings under the Affordable Housing Statute CGS 8-30G, and whereas the Commission finds that the application complies with the requirements of 8-30G, and whereas the Commission has determined based on sufficient evidence in the record that the application does not pose a harm to public interest in health, safety, or other matters, and that the Commission may consider it is in the public interest. Be it therefore resolved, the Commission hereby approves the application of Bride Lake LLC for approval of an affordable housing site plan modification with the following conditions. 1. the applicant shall submit to the zoning commission staff an as-built site plan documenting the construction of the stormwater infrastructure plan of the 100% retention and treatment of water quality volume. Said plan shall be submitted prior to the granting of a certificate of zoning occupancy, a CZO, for the last completed buildings. The engineer of record will review the as-built and certify that it conforms to this condition. Number 2, the applicant shall install modified landscaping along the property frontage on North Brybrook Road as represented and agreed to during the public hearing. 3, the applicant shall construct a playground on the site as represented and agreed to during the public hearing. 4, all the above noted improvements shall be installed and completed prior to the final CZO for the last completed buildings.
Second.
Is there discussion?
I'd like to ask what happened with your asking.
Oh, yes,
about the
I did, yeah. It was a moot point since no additional testimony is allowed after the hearing closed. So we could not have another third party or even Mr. Trinkus come back because the hearing was closed. So legally it wasn't allowed. We checked with the town attorney.
It wasn't okay. I wasn't asking about, I didn't understand that we were talking about any further testimony. It was
But
simply,
even new discussion can't be held. Just like,
I was just hoping that conversation between the applicant, the engineers involved.
do you want to address that?
Very briefly, because there's a motion on the floor and I shouldn't be involved at all. I did have a meeting with the applicant, his engineer, his attorney, and our engineer, Alex, and discussed some of the issues that came up. And because we can't accept new evidence or new plans because the public hearing is closed, and that's part of our process in Connecticut, that's well documented. The conditions hopefully will get us to the 100% stormwater quality. And because that's as close as we can come to clarifying some of the questions.
Okay. I just would...
So I'll share it that way carefully because you are in a motion.
I understand.
Thank you.
We're discussing motion. I was just imagining that this would be an opportunity for the applicant to amend their proposal if possible, because we have time to make this. We don't have to make this decision.
The problem is the public hearing's closed, so anything more we got from them was voluntary, and we feel that they agreed to some of the things that were brought up, such as the playground, such as the trees along the frontage, and to ensure that there's 100% stormwater volume and quality achieved prior to occupancy of the last building.
Do we have any more comments from anyone on the commission?
No.
I am for the motion. I just feel that it's not anything we could ever win in court, and I just feel taxpayers' money is valuable, and I'd hate to see it spent on something we could not win. And I think, we've had 2 engineers in town hall that are completely satisfied with the stormwater proposal. So I feel confident in voting for this.
So, call for vote.
So,
Are we still discussing? Or?
if you have any...
Yeah. I would just like to say that I am not for the motion. I think there is sufficient evidence that there's harm to the public interest. Potentially, we just need to have sufficient evidence for that. Just establish more than a mere possibility. The record doesn't need to show that the effects are going to be definite or even more likely than not. It just needs to establish more than a mere possibility. And I think we have sufficient evidence in the record for that, which I won't go into because it's this issue, and I think that the interest in protecting, in this particular issue, protecting the brook and the estuary and so forth clearly outweighs the need for affordable housing, especially since in the price point that the 6 affordable units we're talking about would address, we have, according to the East Lyme Affordable Housing Plan, we don't have a need for housing in that price point. In fact, we have a surplus of more than 600 units in those price points that those affordable units would provide. So it's pretty easy to establish that our interest in protecting Bride Brook Lake, State Park Estuary, and the beach clearly outweigh the need for affordable housing. I would make the same argument with respect to pedestrian safety. I think the record establishes that there is a danger and exposure to thousands of pedestrian trips that will occur on that site every year, and I think it's unsafe and therefore contrary to our responsibility to bring an additional 25% more households into a site that is not well planned or designed for pedestrian safety. And so for that reason, I'm going to oppose this. What I'd really like to see is the project site plan be improved to address those concerns, and in which case I'd be very happy to vote for it. But as it is right now, I can't do that, and I wish and I'd like to invite the applicant again to do the right thing and amend their design and submit an amendment for that so that we can support it. Thank you.
Ms. Markovitz, do you have?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of this, but I know that we are kind of hamstrung by the affordable housing statutes. That's really all I have to say about it.
I agree with you, and again, I trust both our town engineers that have told us they could take care of the stormwater issues. I think they do have a case in court, and I know they did ask Mr. Paivo to recuse himself at first, and he didn't, and that could be an issue in a court. But I've said what I've had to say, and if no one else has anything, let's vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It passed 4-2. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Since we're continuing the Kristen Clark hearing, we will not be doing anything more with that in our regular meeting. Old business is the same status as last week. Mr. Mulholland,
I have nothing.
You have nothing. Our ex officio.
I'll just say that the Board of Selectmen.
Could you? We can't hear you.
I'll put on my teacher voice.
Okay.
How's this? The Board of Selectmen finished its discussion and review presentation of all of the departmental budgets in town. All of those budget hearings have been recorded and are run regularly on public TV. And we will now proceed to the Board of Finance, getting out their pens and pencils and sharpening them, and we'll see where we go from there.
I have a question. Have you heard anything about 2 of our wells being contaminated?
I have not. That wouldn't be in my domain.
Okay.
So
Just
nope.
curious. I think Ms. Susko went to they finally have a planning meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, my first time up here. All right. So zoning referrals were discussed, Eric S. Parker Esquire wants to amend section 20.26, paragraph M, to allow for drive-throughs with no direct egress to a state road. It was unclear whom he's representing. Then by zoning, I believe this came up in our last meeting in section 34.11.2.1 to replace shall with may, to replace shall with may in the verbiage for having an architect review structures. Where else? They talked about their new business subdivision regulations. There was a discussion about changing the application submission procedure to allow for a certain time frame for Natural Resources Commission to reply to submissions. And if they do not reply by that deadline, then the commission, or then it's deemed favorable for the applicant. They also discussed ending the archaeological review requirement for development. It was noted that we are one of few towns that still requires it. It was also noted that developers may not want to spend large amounts of money that this requires, and that they will then develop under 830G. Gary Goschel, I'm not sure to say his name, will look into other towns that currently have this requirement and what they do in these situations. And then, again, under new business, there was a discussion about amending their bylaws to make them more granular in regards to filling vacancies. They discussed it and decided that the current process is okay, and they want to allow for the public to apply for vacancies. And that's all I have.
Oh, thank you for going. And we have down that Ms. Kalal will go. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
So did they decided to remove the archaeological review?
They did not decide. They didn't make a decision there. Gary's going to look into it and get more information about other towns and how they handle archaeological reviews.
Thank you.
So nothing was decided.
And Ms. Kalal, will you be attending planning on April 9th?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just have one. I was driving down Main Street today and just noticed how nice Cafe Sol looked, and I don't know how many people noticed the gas station remodel, but I know Mr. Mulholland had a lot to do with them both turning out so well. So I just wanted to thank you and thought it was something nice.
You're welcome, and I'll just add on, if you haven't figured it out yet, Soapy Noble Car Wash is open so you can get your car cleaned finally.
Yeah.
And then we're free car washes.
So with that, do I have a motion to adjourn? Oh.
I have one more item. I feel like I'm beating a dead horse here. But given the fact that our meetings are now averaging 2+ hours, I wondered if we can't reconsider starting at 7 like all the other commissions do.
Would the commission like to add that to the next agenda to discuss starting time? Okay, we'll add it to the agenda next week.
Can we include ending time?
Thank you, Mrs. Markowitz.
Pardon?
Thank you.
Might I ask for something, perhaps a compromise, that when items are on the agenda that we know that they're going to be extensive, perhaps those meetings could start earlier, and then if it was just a regular meeting, go to 7:30, if that might be a fair compromise.
We'll put it on the agenda to discuss next week. So with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yes, so moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good night.